Bumped up. Hey. Tight up.
Now at 11, traumatized friends opening up about that deadly birthday party shooting in Inglewood. They gathered to remember the 4 people killed as the 5th victim fights for his life. Police calling the shooting a targeted ambush. Eyewitness News reporter Leanne Suter is in Inglewood tonight with new information.
2 sisters among those gunned down, their family gathering here pleading for help finding the killers. Gathered by candlelight, family and friends mourn 2 sisters gunned down in an ambush attack at a house party in Inglewood.
It was kids living life, just trying to have fun, celebrating life, and it was cut short.
Brianna Steins turned 20 today. She was celebrating her birthday with her big sister, 25-year-old Marnisha Hamilton, both of them studying to become nurses. Authorities say several suspects burst into the party and opened fire.
Look at this young woman on your screen right now. The smile, the energy, the life radiating off of her like she had the whole world ahead of her, because she did. She was 20 years old. She had plans. She had dreams. She had a family that loved her and a future that, for the first time in a long time, was starting to look like something real. Her name was Brianna Stein. And on the night of January 22nd, 2022, she threw herself a birthday party. She booked an Airbnb in a quiet Inglewood neighborhood. She invited people she loved. Her sister was there. Her friends were there. Music was playing. Food was ready. Laughter filled the room. For one night, just one night, everything felt like it was supposed to feel. Normal, joyful, hopeful. She had no idea that across town, 2 men were already in a car, already moving, already locked in on her location. She had no idea that the party she'd been so excited about would be the last night of her life. At approximately 1:30 in the morning, police received an urgent call. When officers arrived on scene, they were met with something out of a nightmare. Multiple bodies scattered across the apartment floor, blood on the walls, the acrid smell of gunpowder still hanging in the air. Each victim struck multiple times. The devastation was total. And as investigators began piecing together what happened, one conclusion rose above all others. This was not random. This was planned, targeted, cold-blooded, an ambush set in a place where no one saw it coming, a birthday party. And someone had been watching, waiting, and willing to end multiple lives just to send a message. So who did this, and why? To answer that, we have to go back, way back to the beginning of a life that was as complicated as it was beautiful. This is the life and death of Brianna Stein. Brianna Stein was born on January 23, 2002, in Los Angeles, California. She grew up in Long Beach, where she attended Jordan High School, a school full of young people who understood from an early age that life wasn't going to hand them anything. Students who went to school in the morning and navigated a minefield in the afternoon. Products of hard circumstances, fighting the odds every single day, just trying to find a way through. But Brianna wasn't someone who sat back and waited for life to happen. From a young age, she was someone who moved, someone who acted, who made decisions, who went after what she wanted, even when the options in front of her were far from ideal. She went by the name Lady Takeoff, and in her world, that name meant something. At a young age, Brianna became affiliated with Mob Peru, a gang rooted on the east side of Compton, known for its aggression and its deeply embedded street culture. And you have to understand what that world actually looked like. This wasn't just a neighborhood. It was a battle zone, a place where the concept of a safe childhood was a luxury that many never got to experience. A place that shaped its young women in ways that most people on the outside would struggle to comprehend. In Mob Peru, the women weren't bystanders. They weren't just standing on the periphery watching the men do what men do. They were active, present, in the thick of it. Fights, shootouts, the business of street life. Brianna was fully involved in all of it. She had a reputation for being fearless, all in, ride or die in the most literal sense of the word. But here's what gets lost in the headlines and the crime reports. Behind that toughness, behind the reputation and the street persona, Brianna was a young woman who wanted more for herself. That hunger never left her, no matter how deep in the life she went. She found ways to hustle. She connected with pimps, linked up with Hoovers, and began working Figueroa, the infamous stretch of road in Los Angeles long associated with street life and survival economies. She caught dates, she finessed, she moved money, and as time went on, she expanded her reach. Vegas, Oakland, she was building something not in a conventional way, but she was building. She also got into boosting, the organized theft and resale of high-value merchandise from retail stores, often working in groups and moving product through online marketplaces and street-level networks. It's a serious operation when it's done at scale, and Brianna operated at scale. At one point, she even secured a $17,000 PPP loan, a move that showed, whatever else you want to say about her circumstances, she was sharp. She was resourceful. She was always thinking 3 moves ahead. But even in the middle of all of that, something was changing inside her. There comes a moment for a lot of people in that world, a moment when you look at the path you're on and ask yourself if this is really it, if this is all there is, if there's a way out, and whether you're brave enough to take it. For Brianna, that moment came. She made a decision. She walked away from Figueroa. She stopped the work that had sustained her for years, and she enrolled at U.S.A. college, working towards certification as a certified nursing assistant. A CNA, someone who shows up in hospitals and care facilities and actually takes care of people, someone who does something that matters. Think about that for a second. This woman, who had grown up in a war zone, who had survived things that would have broken most people, who had made a life out of street-level survival, decided she wanted to put on scrubs and take care of the sick. That says everything about who Brianna really was underneath all of it. She was 20 years old, and for the first time in a long time, the future looked like something she could actually reach out and touch. And so, with that new energy, with that new purpose, she decided to celebrate. Together with her older sister, Maricia Hamilton, Brianna began organizing a private birthday party. She booked an Airbnb in a quiet residential neighborhood in Inglewood. The plan was low-key, close friends, family, good food, good music. Just the people she loved, gathered together to mark the start of a new chapter. She invited various people, including members from different gang affiliations. On the surface, it seemed manageable. She knew these people, she trusted the situation. But one mistake, one seemingly small misstep in how the party's details got shared, would unravel everything. Because the wrong people found out where she was going to be, and those people were already at war with her world. While Brianna and her guests were arriving, while the music was starting and the food was being laid out, and the laughter was filling that Airbnb on Park Avenue, 2 men across town were preparing to move. Corey Irvin and Carlil Santos, both members of the 118 East Coast Crips, more specifically, what investigators would later describe as the shooter clique of that faction, a subgroup defined by one thing: violence. These were not peripheral members floating around the edges of gang life. These were active, aggressive, and dangerous. They had already been involved in multiple shootings in the months leading up to this night, and on the night of January 22nd, they had a target. The tensions between Mob Peru and the East Coast Crips had been building for months. It wasn't one single incident that set this off. It was a slow accumulation: street beef, territorial disputes, and the accelerant that keeps pouring fuel on all of it today: social media. Post after post, taunt after taunt, public disrespect met with public retaliation, all playing out online for everyone to see, all stoking fires that eventually had to burn somewhere. When word reached Corey and Carlil about the party, who was going to be there, where it was, when it was happening, the decision was made. Just after 1:00 in the morning, they got in their vehicle and drove toward the Airbnb. They parked nearby, quiet, unhurried. They moved on foot toward the house with the kind of calm that comes from having made up your mind completely. And then, over 100 shots fired. They approached the house, unloaded outside, then forced their way inside and continued shooting. It was over in seconds, pure carnage. Brianna Stein was struck and killed instantly. Her sister, Maricia Hamilton, 25 years old, there to celebrate her baby sister's birthday, was also killed. Their friend Terrence was shot and died on the spot. A fourth victim, Jadon, was rushed to the hospital. He would not survive. A fifth person, despite being shot, survived. When it was done, Corey and Khalil walked away. They left behind 5 people shot, 4 of them dying, and an entire community that would never be the same. When officers arrived and began processing the scene, the word that kept coming up in witness accounts was the same word, over and over again. One neighbor who had heard the shots described it that way. She initially thought it was firecrackers, but something about the volume, the rhythm, the sheer relentlessness of it told her immediately that this was something else entirely. "I told my husband, this sounds like war." Bullet holes riddled the exterior of the home. Shell casings were everywhere. The scene inside was devastating beyond description. First responders found 5 victims. 3 were pronounced dead at the scene. The other 2 were rushed to nearby hospitals. The Inglewood mayor arrived and stood before cameras looking visibly shaken. He called the attack singular in its calculation, the largest number of victims in a single criminal incident the city had seen since the 1990s. Multiple weapons had been used, including an assault rifle and at least 1 handgun. More than 100 shell casings were eventually recovered. And then came the moment that breaks your heart, even through a screen. Tiffany Stein, Breonna's mother, arrived at a candlelight vigil held the following day. She stood in front of photos of her daughters, barely able to speak. She had not lost 1 child, she had lost 2, in the same room, in the same night, in a matter of minutes. Everybody got along with them. All she wanted to do was celebrate her birthday, and her sister came to be with her, just beautiful ladies. There are no words for what that kind of loss does to a person. The community rallied. Hundreds gathered to mourn. Candles lined the sidewalks of Inglewood. Vigils were held. People who barely knew Breonna came out because they understood this tragedy didn't just belong to one family. It belonged to all of them. It was a reminder of how quickly everything can be taken away. But even in the grief, even in the outpouring of community love, there was something else simmering underneath. Anger and a demand for answers. This lady lost 2 kids in a matter of minutes in one night. You know something, say something. Investigators moved quickly. The evidence left behind at the scene was substantial. Surveillance footage from the surrounding area, ballistic evidence, shell casings that could be traced, witness accounts, limited as they were in a community that had every reason to stay silent. The 4 victims all had gang affiliations, Mob Peru, 135 Peru and Grape Street, and as detectives worked their way through the evidence, the picture that emerged was chilling. This attack had not been improvised. The shooters had known exactly who would be at that party. They had known the location, the timing, and the layout. Someone had fed them information, intentionally or not. The names Corey Irvin and Khalil Santos appeared early in the investigation and stayed there, but building a case that would hold up in court, that would take time. More time than Breonna's family wanted to wait. For over a year, her killers moved through the world as free men. That reality was unbearable for everyone who had loved her. Then, in August 2023, the breakthrough came. Federal and local law enforcement announced the indictment of 7 members of the 118 East Coast Crips, all connected to a string of violent crimes that had stretched across Inglewood, Compton, and Los Angeles over the course of more than a year. The indictment painted a picture of an organized, deliberate campaign of violence, a faction within the East Coast Crips that had essentially been operating as a hit squad. The investigators traced the violence back to December 6, 2021, when Corey, Khalil, and an accomplice drove to an RV park and opened fire on 2 men. The attacks continued the following day at an Arco gas station, then again and again, each time escalating, each time more brazen, until it all came to a head on the night of Breonna's party. It was never just about Breonna. She was one chapter in a much longer, much bloodier story, but she was the chapter that made the whole country pay attention. On August 5, 2025, Corey Irvin and Carlil Santos stood before a judge and heard their fate. 5 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. For each of them, the judge, in delivering the sentence, described their crimes as sickening. And beyond the life sentences, additional time was stacked on top, over 200 years for Corey, over 100 years for Carlil. These men will never breathe free air again for as long as they live. Candela Taylor was convicted on 2 counts of second-degree murder and sentenced to a term ranging from 30 years to life. Samaj Brown was found guilty of first-degree murder, with a special circumstance finding of murder while lying in wait. Marvin Lanier was convicted of second-degree murder in the death of Antonio Dawson, though acquitted on 2 other counts. And Kevin and Terran Adams, while the jury deadlocked on certain murder charges, were both convicted on attempted murder and conspiracy. 4 additional defendants are still awaiting their day in court. For Brianna's family, the verdicts landed with that complicated, bittersweet weight that only victims' families truly understand. The men responsible would be punished. The system this time had worked. And yet, Brianna was still gone. Mauricia was still gone. No sentence handed down in a courtroom could undo a single second of what happened in that Airbnb on Park Avenue. Justice and grief are not the same thing. You can have one and still be completely undone by the other. Brianna's brother carries her memory forward today through his clothing brand, Takeoff's Apparel, named in honor of his sister, keeping Lady Takeoff alive in the world she left behind. It is, in its own way, a beautiful act of refusal. A refusal to let the streets have the final word on who she was. And who was she, really? She was someone who grew up in circumstances most of us will never know. She made choices, some good, some dangerous, that were shaped by an environment that offered limited options and demanded hard decisions. She hustled, she survived, she fought. And then, at the very moment she was choosing something different, choosing school, choosing a career in healthcare, choosing a legitimate path, the violence she had tried so hard to outrun caught up with her anyway. That is the cruelest part of Brianna's story, not just that she died young, but that she died on the edge of something better. She was so close. Her story is not unique, and that's exactly what makes it so devastating. There are Briannas in cities all across this country right now, young people navigating impossible environments, trying to find a way out, getting pulled back in by forces bigger than any one person. The gang rivalries, the social media wars, the old grudges that never seem to die. The culture of retaliation that turns birthday parties into crime scenes and candles on sidewalks into eulogies. She didn't deserve what happened to her. Her sister didn't deserve it. Terrence didn't deserve it. Jadon didn't deserve it. No one at that party deserved it. And the fact that we can say all of that while also acknowledging who Brianna was, the full, complicated, real version of her, is what separates a story from just another headline. Brianna Stein was a human being. She was loved. She mattered. And her life meant something that no bullet and no gang war can ever take away. Brianna Stein was 20 years old. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, and a woman who, despite everything, never stopped trying to build something worth having. Her killers will die in prison. The community still mourns. And somewhere out there, her brother is stitching her name into fabric, making sure the world doesn't forget. Lady Takeoff, gone too soon, never forgotten.